Hi. So what if I tell you right now that God is not who you think he is? What if I tell you that it's more of a phenomenon than actually a living being? I mean, we all must have come across the question, especially when we're children, right? Like, what is God, right? And is God real? And if so, then how does it all play out? I mean, if God is the one who created the world, then who created God, right? And unfortunately, we might have not found the answers to these questions, and we just might have forgotten them, right? Well, in today's video, we're going to cover them, and we're going to find out the exact answer for these questions. For that, you'll have to watch till the end of the video. But I promise it won't take long to understand this phenomenon. So, by the way, if you're wondering who I am, my name is Dharun Mahendran, and this is ADeepTalk. So, by the way, I just started my YouTube channel, so a sub to the channel would be highly, highly appreciated. When talking about God, right? The one of the most common view or common perspective of God is this monotheistic view, right? So basically, we have the monotheistic religions like you got Christianity, you have Islam and Judaism, where God is described as this powerful overall knowing and this benevolent being who created and governs the universe, right? So basically, God is seen as a singular and personal entity who is involved in the world, what happens in the world, and he also influences the life of every individual. And this is probably one of the most common perspective in the world. And the other most common one is the polytheistic religions, where you have religions like Hinduism, Greek religion, and the Norse mythology, right? It's the same thing like the monotheistic religion, except here you have multiple gods and goddesses, right? And each of them have their own attributes, their own domain, and their own stories, and the way these deities interact with each other and human beings are totally different. And then you have the other vague category, that is atheism, right? Where most of the atheists believe that, God doesn't exist, right? They don't believe in God, right? And there's this other view, which is actually acceptable, and that is the agnostic view, where they claim that both the existence and the non-existence of God is unknown or is unknowledgeable, and it is true. So basically, they're saying, hey, you know what? There's a 50% chance that God exists, and there's a 50% chance that it doesn't, and it's actually pretty valid and pretty logical, to be honest. So very often, the this concept or this phenomenon of God is a deeply, I could say, a complex and a contemptuous topic, right? And sometimes, and not sometimes, most of the times, they're influenced by various cultural, historical, and even personal factors. But in this video, we're not gonna let these factors affect or cloud our judgment in figuring out exactly what God is. And for this, we need to understand this phenomenon of God, although it has various perspectives and various religion, but we need to understand them in a neutral way. Well, for this, if you actually look closer, if you look deeper, right, you see that it ultimately, all the religions, right, it all boils down to one thing, the same thing, which brings me to point number one. God is one and is the same, right? I mean, we just call him by different names, just the way we call him different names in different religion, right? Like in Christianity, you call God Jesus, right? In Islam, you call God Allah. In Hinduism, you're gonna call God Vishnu, Shiva, right? So it's like there's this mother, right? Let's just imagine a lady sitting right next to me, right? So I'm her son. I'm gonna call her mother, and my father is gonna call her wife, and my mom's mom is gonna call her daughter, right? So it's actually the same person, but we're just calling them by different names. And there's actually a reason why I'm saying that, because if you look into the religious scriptures, right, the holy books of each religion, I mean, like for Christianity, you got the Bible. For Islam, you got the Quran, and Hinduism, you have the Bhagavad Gita, right? You actually realize that most of the teachings which are given in these books are 90 to 95% of the time they're the same thing, right? They're just said in different ways, and they use different wordings and different methodologies to teach you the same thing, right? And in fact, if you actually dig deeper into Hinduism, right? And I told you previously that Hinduism is a polytheistic religion, right? But if you're a really devout Hindu, right, like I am, then you'll actually realize that in the Bhagavad Gita, that is in chapter 10, verse 23, Krishna said something. I don't know exactly. I can't quote exactly what he said, because I'll go mostly wrong. But goes somewhere in the lines of, him saying that, hey, I'm Shankar, that is Shiva. I am Brahma, and I am Kuber, and he goes on naming all gods. So basically, he's saying, hey, I am God, and I am one, right? So if you're a really devout Hindu, you'll actually realize that you'll actually know that there's only one God. And even recently, Vivek Ramaswamy told in one of his interviews that, even in Hinduism, there is only one God, right? And he firmly believes that. So if you haven't seen it, you can check it out somewhere on YouTube. I don't know. But yeah, I just saw it. So wait, does that mean that now God is this living being, who foresees pretty much everything, and who really dwells into the lives of millions, if not billions, of people, and pass judgment and based on their actions, and influences their life? Well, for that, the answer is going to be both yes and no, right? Well, in order to understand this, we need to dig a little bit deeper. Otherwise, hey, this channel won't be called ADeepTalk. Huh. Pretty ironic, right? So, sorry, I'll stop making jokes. So, in order to understand this, we need to use first principle thinking. Now, for those of you who are wondering what first principle thinking is, if you have seen my previous video where I told you exactly, to understand how exactly the universe works, I told you need to use first principle thinking, right? So for those of you who are wondering what first principle thinking is, I'll try to make it as short, sweet, and simple for you, and digestible for you. So first principle thinking is basically involves breaking down a complex problem into more basic and fundamental parts, and understanding the core elements very, very deeply. Now, innovative solutions can be constructed, but they don't have to be relying on assumptions or conventional methods, right? Like, for example, I'll give you a simple example, right? Like, for example, I ask a normal person, right, who doesn't use first principle thinking. I point my finger to an apple tree, and I'm gonna ask him, hey, what do you see? He's gonna say, well, I see a tree, I see an apple hanging from that tree, so it's an apple tree, that's it. But if I ask a guy, who thinks using first principle thinking, I'm like, hey, what do you see? He's gonna be like, I see a plant, right? A tree. I see a tree, and the tree has an apple. I wonder how that apple is hanging from that tree, right? I mean, it's gonna really need a lot of nutrition and energy to grow that fruit, right? So Okay, so I can see that beneath the stems there's these things which are called root that take in water from the soil, and I wonder where all the nutritions are coming from. They're probably within the soil, right? So the root ultimately absorbs all the water and nutrition and takes it to the fruits and various parts of the plant body, and that's how the tree is hanging in there, right? So that's just a rough example which I gave you right there. And if you actually look into the internet, Elon Musk is a famous advocate for the first principle thinking. In fact, I got this whole idea of first principle thinking from him. If you look closely in one of his interviews, actually in many of his interviews, he has actually talked about first principle thinking. He used it in his companies like SpaceX and Tesla, and they're doing right now great. So, where were we? Oh, yes. So I was gonna say we're gonna ask the question that is first principle thinking, um, uh, if the first principle thinking is really gonna um, show us exactly if God is this living being that foresees pretty much everything, and if he really influences the life of every single individual on this planet, right? That was the question, right? Sorry, I had to get back to that. So for that, we need to really connect the dots to exactly what is the connection between human beings and God. Think about it, right? What connects God and human being? It's our thought, it's our thinking, it's our mind, the way we think, our thought, right? That's what creates God. And ultimately, the way of thinking and ultimately affects the decision making which we make in our everyday life, right? And influences based on stuff like what we believe and what we think, and that shapes the world pretty much, if it makes sense, right? I mean, think about it, like, just think about it, like everything, every idea or everything that we see around us right now was first created in our mind, right? It was first a thought, and then later on it manifested into reality, right? So in a way, our thought and our belief in God and the fear of doing the right thing, right, affects almost every decision human beings make in their everyday life, right? And so yeah, this phenomenon of God, whether you like it or not, directly or indirectly, influences almost every single being on this planet, right? I mean, it even affects atheists because, they're just chilling, they're like, hey, I don't believe in God, yeah. But a lot of people around them believe in God and they believe God exists and they should do the right stuff. So, yeah, even they're being influenced. So the whole world is being influenced by this belief. So, yeah. So, you like it or not, directly or indirectly, God exists, and God influences the life of every individual. But he doesn't exist in the way we think he exists, right? He exists in this realm, in this dimension, which we call thought, right? Which I just told you right now. And so and while he's existing in this dimensional space, he's influencing the life in the real world, right? In this earth. This is why we say that our thought has power, right? The way we think, what we think has power, and it influences the life on this earth. So yeah, I personally like to believe that God is this untangible, imaginable, and I would say more of like this impersonal force that simply transcends among all descriptions and conceptualization, and simply acts like a path that makes people do the right thing, to walk the right path. So yeah, God is real, but he just doesn't exist the way you think he exists, right? I mean, he doesn't have a physical body, or I mean, yeah, sure, you can imagine him having a body, like you can imagine him like a guy wearing a shirt and a pant, right? You can imagine God as this crush in your class. Okay, that's a bit far. So yeah, you get it, right? So yeah, he can be pretty much anything you want him or her to be, right? Uh, and God basically acts as this median to make people walk the right path, to take the right decision, and to make the world working in the right way. But now that just begs another question. Why good? What is good? And most importantly, why should we be good? I mean, think about it. Why should we be good? I mean, let's be honest, okay? There are a lot of people out there in this real world who are really, really bad guys, right? And there are people who scam people for a living, right? And you have people who do a lot of bad stuff in their life. But there's this one timeline in their life where while they're doing that bad stuff, right? They lived a pretty good life. But their ending was pretty horrible, of course, right? They get justice is being done, and they have a huge number being done on them, and they end up in a very bad way, right? And they begin to struggle. But they did enjoy in one phase of their life. And if you look at every good person in this world, right, you pretty much notice that the initial phase is hard, but as they get closer to the ending phase, their life becomes much better, right? But both good and bad people have it all, right? They have the good phase of their life and the bad phase of their life. So I can be anything. I can be good and I can be bad, right? So why should I be only good? That begs another question, and that is something that is even far, far more interesting than this video. So I'll be making that video and I'll be posting it on YouTube 4 or 5 days. I've already started scripting for that video, and yeah, I'll be posting it. Just give me 5 days, all right? So yeah, if you really enjoy this video, then do consider giving this video a subscribe, a like, and subscribe this channel. And sorry, I'm stuttering a lot, I'm jumbling words a lot, because again, I have never done this. There's a camera being pointed at me. I get nervous all the time. When that happens, all I can think of is many prying eyes looking at me. So I'm sorry, but eventually I'll get over it and I'll be fine. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in 4 to 5 days. Take care. Goodbye.